Hey y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. What happens when we die? From Angel Studios, the force behind Sound of Freedom and The Chosen, comes an unprecedented deep dive into the phenomena of near-death experiences in the new movie, After Death. After Death makes a courageous venture into a hotly debated, mysterious subject by comparing near-death experience with cutting-edge scientific knowledge. Hear from experts in the fields of science, philosophy, and medicine, as well as firsthand experiences of people who have lived through death as they paint a fascinating picture of life in the next realm. This groundbreaking project responds to the soul's innate desire to find meaning in life and solace in the future. Come see it for yourself or pay it forward by providing a free ticket for others to see the film. Leave your preconceptions at the door and prepare for a never-before-seen glimpse into what the next life could entail in After Death, opening October 27th. Get your tickets today or pay it forward at angel.com/3martini lunch. That's angel.com/3 martini lunch. After Death, the end is only the beginning. Rated PG-13.
Welcome to the 3 Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the 3 Martini Lunch. We actually do have a good martini today, so that's an improvement. We do, of course, have a bad, plenty to choose from there as always, and a crazy, which could be very bad depending on how things turn out next week. But Jim, let's start with our good. And even though, as we described in considerable detail yesterday, college campuses have become breeding grounds in many cases for anti-Semitism and intolerance on a number of different levels emanating from the far left. There has been some pushback. We've seen a couple of letters, late certainly, but better late than never. Places like Northwestern and Cal Berkeley, or at least the California system, pushing back on professors who didn't want the word terrorism or just went off on unhinged rants about Israel being an apartheid state or colonizers or things like that. But sometimes it gets even more intense than that. In Virginia, for example, the Republican Attorney General here, Jason Miyares, announcing yesterday that he's probing the American Muslims for Palestine, alleging the organization, quote, may have used funds raised for impermissible purposes under state law, including benefiting or providing support to terrorist organizations. And so we don't know where the investigation will go. I know back in the post 9/11 days, and for quite a while after that, a lot of us were looking at outfits like CARE, which was an unindicted terrorist co-conspirator at one point, and scratching our heads, is there going to be any more scrutiny here? And so whether it's groups like this or some of these student groups on campus that are getting a little more scrutiny now, it'd be better if there wasn't such a massive movement like this, but putting them under the microscope is a good move.
Yeah, I saw this news when you sent it to me, Greg, and I, instead of reflexively reacting negatively, I decided to try to be empathetic. And I decided, oh, wow, you're a Muslim pro-Palestinian organization and you feel like your constitutionally protected First Amendment right guaranteed actions of activism are being unfairly demonized by law enforcement. In fact, you're being it's being implied that you're working with terrorists, you're working with extremists, that you're facilitating violence, and you've done nothing of the sort. God, that must really stink. That must really, really be painful and embarrassing. And you just must be decided. I'm just kind of, Greg, could you remind me, back when people said the Tea Party was a terrible, frightening, extremist terrorist force, did this group speak up and object at all? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. How about during obviously the big hullabaloo in the last few years about schools and what was in the curriculum and parents who were showing up to school boards and all that stuff? When the Department of Justice said that these parents groups could be fronts for terrorist groups, did these groups come out and speak and say, hey, no, this is an unfair charge?
I don't believe so.
And then finally, most recently, the pro-life movement, they've been investigated by the Biden administration's Department of Justice. In fact, some guy who was praying outside of abortion clinics had a SWAT team kick down his door in the middle of the night and all that stuff. Has these Arab and pro-Palestinian groups, have they risen up and said this is an unfair accusation against pro-life movements? Any on that?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so Well, anyway, first of all, if Miyares doesn't find anything, there won't be any charges. So good, in a way, this could sort of clear their names. But if he does find something, they would be prosecuted, and that's good. But if they feel like just the insinuation, just the announcements that this investigation is a smear upon their name, well, Greg, I guess the right thing for us to do would be to say, no, this is wrong, and you shouldn't do this. But I'll get to it, I guess. I don't know, look, probably in your neck of the woods too. There's a lot of leaves that are falling, and I think they pick them up pretty soon. So I got to rake some leaves, and I got to wash my hair tonight. And I'll get around to speaking out and defending this group, but just as quickly as they came around to defending the Tea Party groups and parents groups and pro-life groups, who also have been under the microscope of law enforcement with no real connections to extremism ever exposed. But I'm reminded of that quote from Batman. I'm not going to kill you, but it doesn't mean I have to save you.
Well, like we said yesterday, just because you're Muslim obviously doesn't mean you're sympathetic to terrorist groups, but sometimes these organizations are worthy of further scrutiny. For example, the Office of the Attorney General here in Virginia says that this group has been, quote, fundraising without proper registration, maybe soliciting contributions in the Commonwealth without first having registered with the Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And they're also going to probe allegations that AMP has ties to Hamas, an accusation that stems from a lawsuit showing that a network of anti-Israel groups, including AMP, were providing material support to Hamas. So it's a two-pronged investigation here. So, and if there's there, I'm confident Miyares will explain it. And if there's not, like you said, then they'll be in the clear. But might not be resolved real soon, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, just in short, like you can't shrug off all kinds of investigations of activist groups that you oppose as normal law enforcement activity. But then the moment law enforcement starts looking into your organization and whether it has followed the law, oh my goodness, this is a witch hunt. How dare they do this? Right? The idea that partisan justice is something that only should be objected to when one side is doing it does not hold much water around here or anywhere else.
All right, let's talk about our great sponsor for today, and that is 4 Patriots, makers of a wide number of fine products, including the best-selling survival food kits. It's just great to have food on hand. Maybe you'll be snowed in here in a little bit. There was just a lot of snow in Michigan and Wisconsin the last couple of days. I miss where I grew up. I don't miss that. I can tell you that. It was great trick-or-treating weather yesterday. But, if you get snowed in, if you get your power outage, if there's a supply chain issue, have some stuff on hand. And the best-selling survival food kits from 4 Patriots are delicious. The kits come with real meat and vegetables. You can take them on camping trips or picnics, but they're especially good in an emergency if the power is out. You just got to boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve, and you can enjoy hot meals real quick. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone and to get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4 patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And it's a bad martini we first talked about well before you left for Taiwan. And that was the curious lack of coverage of the hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th and brought back to Gaza and are being kept under conditions we probably don't even want to try to imagine. Just this week, I believe it was John Kirby who said there were fewer than 10 American hostages still in Gaza as a result of a couple being released. And so they said, hey, do you have a specific number? Fewer than 10 was the number. But is that actually the number? Because when you think about it, it's not just the people who are taken forcibly to Gaza. You also have to consider the people who aren't allowed to leave. Now, they might not be held, bound and gagged or whatever, or held at gunpoint or whatever, but there are 600 American citizens who can't leave. This is, I believe, from Haaretz. Meanwhile, the nearly 600 U.S. citizens in Gaza are unable to leave because Hamas is making a number of demands before they'll allow people to leave Gaza. So, Jim, we're not privy to exactly what those demands are. I am seeing today that Egypt has opened its Rafah passage for foreign nationals and injured Palestinians. So there is a way to trickle out, but not if Hamas is not going to let Americans out. So now we've got 600 plus fewer than 10 who can't get out.
Yes, I want to read a bit of Charlie's piece because I think it's it's the sort of thing you probably most a whole lot of people probably didn't think about until you hear these questions being asked. What are the names of the 10 American citizens who, according to the Secretary of State, are still being held in Gaza by Hamas? How old are they? Are they adults or are they children? Are they men or are they women? Are they retired or working age? Do we know any sense of where they are? Do we know how is there anything in their condition? And what chance is there of their release? And if so, what is the federal government doing to secure it? And Charlie writes, he's not asking this as a matter of politics or to criticize the Biden administration. Just like, well, Americans being held hostage is usually a very big story. Usually we get profiles of them. We get, some sort of file photo pictures of them. We get interviews with their families. We get tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. Like we have, there have been times, particularly the Iranian hostage crisis, where Iranian or Americans being held hostage is a big deal. And we know really almost nothing about this. Now, if there was some sort of security advantage to keeping these sorts of things secret, then maybe there'd be, I could go along with it. I believe in the public's right to know, but I also believe that we must take actions to protect innocent human life. And this, I guess I could see that, if we played up their abduction and their continued captivity, that somehow this might increase the leverage of Hamas or something. I guess I'm open to the argument that there's a good reason for this, but it feels really strange. And Charlie points out, as you and I discussed on this podcast, a couple of weeks ago, we don't see any cryon on the bottom of the screen that tell Hamas hostage crisis, 27 days and counting. I don't know if there's been any questions to Karine Jean-Pierre. If there haven't been a lot of them, and there certainly haven't been particularly good answers. And so why is this? Why, and then to point out about maybe there are Americans who are in the Gaza Strip who would like to leave and who can't, which may not be the same as the, hostages who were abducted from Israeli territory and taken back to the Gaza Strip. I would note that there is no airport in Gaza that is functioning. I looked this up, that at one point there was indeed a Yasser Arafat International Airport. And much like the man it was named after, it doesn't work. It was originally Dahania International Airport. It opened on November 24th, 1998, and all passenger flights ended in February 2001, just 3 years, actually about less than 3 years later, during the Second Intifada. Israel bombed the radar station, bombed the control tower, and then bulldozers cut the runway in 2002. And here's the thing that I think says a bit about life in the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian life under Hamas. Nobody's ever fixed it. They've had 21 years and nothing has changed. Now, sometimes, readers of Between Two Scorpions will recall, sometimes because of war, airports get bombed and they never get fixed. There is one in Cyprus that is kind of this spooky looking, almost a monument to a bygone era of a better time when people could fly in and out of Cyprus from that airport. Now that the island is split into two between a Turkish side and a Greek side, that there's this is kind of in the no man's land in the middle. But you can't fly into or out of the Gaza Strip. You got to go to either Egypt or to Israel, and obviously the borders there are closed. So maybe it's just really hard to get out, and those Americans simply can't find a way out. But if there's any effort by the Hamas authorities to not allow Americans to leave, well, then they aren't all that different from the hostages who were abducted and taken from Israeli territory. So again, it's just really bizarre that we hear so little about this. It's very hard to believe that this isn't, in some level, an effort to protect the Biden administration, because everybody remembers how the Iranian hostage crisis effectively doomed the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And now we have another first-term Democratic president, and the media does not want him to lose re-election or does not want the Republican nominee, in this point most likely to be Donald Trump, does not want the Republicans to win. And so you can't help but feel like there's this effort to downplay or soft pedal an ongoing hostage crisis that we know of involves, 10 who were abducted, but conceivably involves hundreds of Americans who would like to get out of an ongoing war zone, but cannot.
I think you said it well. I think Charlie said it well. We should at least know who these people are. I don't think that's asking too much, but there's been almost a total media blackout on that.
Hey, y'all. This is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. Superbeats Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure and promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Superbeats are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And believe me, I know because I'm traveling all over the country covering stories and frankly, sometimes all over the world. And it's so easy. I just keep my Super Beets in my handbag, in my pocket, wherever. And I've got amazing energy. And guess what? They taste really good. So supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, you also get a productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beet Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beet Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sarah. That's S-A-R-A. Getsuperbeets.com, code Sarah to get 15% off your first order. Getsuperbeets.com, promo code Sarah.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And today is the 1st of November, which means next Tuesday is Election Day, not only for us in Virginia, because we are inundated with politics every year, being an odd numbered election year for state and local stuff. And other states join us for all the fun. New Jersey, Kentucky, Louisiana, although they've already chosen their governor. Good job, Louisiana. Mississippi, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but couple of curious races to watch here, and it also kind of ties in with what we've talked about briefly in our own area, because you've got Democrats running for state Senate, state House, and even local races here in Northern Virginia. Literally every ad, the entire ad. There's no other subject other than abortion. And if you elect this Republican, abortion is going away in Virginia, and they're a horrible, horrible person. And I'll vote to keep abortion, is what the Democrats are all saying. But the Democrats aren't just trying to do it in pretty deep blue Northern Virginia and the purple parts of Virginia. They're also trying to do it statewide in places like Mississippi, where Republican Governor Tate Reeves is running for re-election against Democrat Brandon Presley. And yes, he is related to Elvis somehow. Reeves didn't win by a ton 4 years ago, about 5 points. And depending on the poll you look at, he's either probably headed to re-election or it's a dogfight. But the ones that show it's a dogfight are sponsored by Democrats. The most recent poll is from Public Policy Polling, sponsored by the Democratic Governors Association. They've got Reeves up by 1, 46-45. Mason-Dixon, a more independent survey from the end of September, early October, has Reeves up 8, 51-43. That 51 is significant because Mississippi is one of those states where you've got to get over 50% to be the winner, kind of like all those Georgia runoffs we've seen in the last few years. So we're also looking at a governor's race in Kentucky where abortion is a big issue, but not the only issue. We'll see what happens in the end there as well, but I have not seen a single poll showing the Republican Attorney General Daniel Cameron ahead of Governor Andy Beshear. There was a poll that was tied several months ago, but every recent poll shows Beshear ahead by varying margins. So if the Democrats can hang on in a red state like Kentucky, it's going to be frustrating. And if they can score an upset win in Mississippi, they're going to feel like they've got a ton of momentum for 2024, Jim. So the Democrats feel like this was the issue that kept them from suffering a bloodbath in the midterms last year after the Dobbs decision. And so the question is can Republicans articulate this issue well? They've been talking about it for 50 years. Can they actually make a compelling argument that they're a position for, greater restrictions, or in some cases, significant restrictions on abortion are the right way for the state to go? Hopefully they can.
Greg, there's been this narrative emerging that the overturning of Roe versus Wade was a catastrophic success for the pro-life movement and for pro-life Republicans. And you're probably, catastrophic success, what does that mean? Catastrophic success is when, you win a war, but you can't control the territory. Catastrophic success in this case is that, yes, Roe versus Wade has been overturned, but the pro-life movement and the Republicans who identify themselves as pro-life were really not prepared for it. It wasn't like it snuck up on them. Everybody kind of knew that this decision was coming down. It was a good possibility that Roe versus Wade would be overturned, and that this would return the issue of abortion to the states, and that if you wanted to enact further restrictions upon abortion, you would need to then win these state legislative races. You would need to win these governor's races, and you would need to have a policy on abortion that could win in a state that might not have a solid pro-life, no abortions under any circumstances, majority position in your electorate. Now, maybe it would be 15 weeks, maybe it would be 6 weeks, maybe you'd want to have exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, health of the mother. You are probably going to have to tailor the laws of your state to get the most restrictive set of circumstances you could and still win a majority, both in your executive branch elections and in state legislative elections. And that was probably going to be less than 100% restriction on all abortions. But that would still be a huge improvement upon how the circumstances were under Roe versus Wade. And that, this is what pro-lifers had said they had wanted for a generation: return the issue to the states and allow California to have its laws the way they want, and have Virginia and Kentucky and Louisiana and Mississippi, and let all those states decide what abortion laws fit their state's needs best. Well, as you mentioned, here in Virginia, I said every Democratic ad is abortion, 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 and Republican ads were crime, schools, crime, schools, crime, schools. And we'll see how this shakes out. Obviously, Northern Virginia, pretty Democratic-leaning region, pretty pro-choice region. Clearly, Democrats think this is the message that's going to carry them in these state legislative races. We'll see how it shakes out. I do think, and I'm unnerved by the fact that Democrats know exactly what they stand for and are not afraid to say abortion, on demand, taxpayer funded, all circumstances, no restrictions, not even sex selection, Any reason you want to get an abortion, you can get them. And that might win because the pro-lifers are divided between the folks who want an absolute total ban with no exceptions and those who want more restrictions but to have it legal in certain circumstances. If that ends up, if Republicans lose races because of that, it's going to be very bad, and it's going to require some hard reckoning about the fact that you can't always get what you want. And if you want to restrict abortions, sometimes you have to take half a loaf. Sometimes you have to take a restriction in the law that's not everything you want, but that will get you closer to what you want. And perhaps someday in the future, you can enact additional restrictions. We'll see how that shakes out. It's not looking terrific, but we'll see how it is. Glenn Youngkin has just been all over the campaign trail, all over the state, doing everything he can. We will see in about a week how things shake out. As for these other races, the other dynamic that's at work here, during the Obama years, Democrats, to their frustration, realized they had a lot of new voters who had showed up in 2008 and who were really big Barack Obama fans and not so interested in all these other candidates, and that they would not show up for John Corzine when he was running for governor re-election in New Jersey, or Cree Deeds here in Virginia. They weren't going to show up in the 2010 midterms. They weren't going to show up in the 2014 midterms. They would show up in 2012 when Barack Obama was running against Mitt Romney. But off-year elections and gubernatorial races, and it just didn't interest them. And so these states of Kentucky, Louisiana, and Mississippi, with their governor's races, have always been a weird one. And there's a question of how are they precursors for what you're going to see the following year? Are they just kind of reflective of their status as southern or semi-southern states? Or are they, usually they have fairly lower turnout than you would see in a midterm year or in a presidential election year. And I kind of wonder if now we're in a circumstance where the Republican Party has a lot of Trump voters who are really big fans of Donald Trump and not such big fans of the rest of the Republican Party. And they just may not be that motivated to show up in an off-year election. We'll see how things shake out. We Republicans already got a pleasant surprise in the Louisiana gubernatorial election, so maybe it will work out okay. Maybe they will turn up. But I do wonder if the ongoing Republican presidential primary, all the crises we see on the foreign policy front, where just Republican voters just aren't as jazzed, just aren't as fired up about these elections in an off year. And, the people who show up year in, year out, every single election, even when it's, not in the normal circumstances, are the little old ladies and the white collar suburbanites who just kind of see voting as a civic duty that they are supposed to do year in, year out, any time of year, special elections, somebody dies and they have to fill an opening. They do it. And we'll see how these things turn out. I think it's, lately Republicans have done really badly in special elections. We will see if these off-year elections in November continue that pattern, or whether there was something, we saw in that Louisiana gubernatorial election that indicated Republicans were going to do a lot better than the conventional wisdom would suggest.
Yeah, I'd just like to see Republicans go on offense more on this issue. They always let the media, set the parameters. It's always about, situations of rape, which are horrible situations, but they make up a fraction of 1% of abortions. And so they end up playing the entire game, inside the 2 or 3 yard line on their end of the field playing defense, instead of talking about how radical the Democratic position is, especially in comparison to just a few years ago. I mean, back a decade or so ago, taxpayer-funded abortion was, a lethal poison pill to your political career. Nobody publicly did that unless you were in the super, super safe deep blue district, and all the way up to birth. And some of them even think it's okay to just let babies die after they're born following an attempted abortion because the party of science, of course, believes life begins when the baby is wanted. I mean, if you look at the national polling, anything after the first trimester for sure is increasingly unpopular, anything after 20 weeks in particular. And so, who actually did this well was Donald Trump, who is now, of course, demonizing Ron DeSantis and others for being too aggressive in setting a limit at the heartbeat stage and that sort of thing. But in that, I think it was the third debate in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, the abortion issue came up and he went straight to partial birth abortions and all this stuff late term that he knew people by large margins were horrified by. And that ended up being the ground that debate question centered on for the rest of the conversation. And Hillary couldn't get her way out of it. And so Republicans would be much smarter to point out the extremism of the Democrats than what the media likes to label as their extremism. So, there's a way to fight this effectively. And you'd think after 50 years, Republicans would have the message pretty well honed. But I think they still need some work on this. So if it doesn't go well next week, that's one thing they need to work on a lot heading into next year.
Can't wait, Greg.
So anyway, we'll see. We're not predicting doom and gloom next week. It's up to every campaign to get their people out and get the votes that they can get out there. And so hopefully everything works well next week and we don't have a lot of finger pointing about how the process worked and we just know who won the races. So Jim, have a great day. Tomorrow, neither of us are around because we have our special on Jim's trip to Taiwan, the good, the bad, and yes, there was some crazy on the trip as well. And then I will also be out on Friday. Jim will be back then. Chad Benson will be in for me, and they'll have the normal fare on 3 Martini Lunch on Friday. So Jim, I will officially see you on Monday, but I highly encourage everyone to check in tomorrow and Friday as well.
Well, Greg, I will see you Monday, and I'll say to listeners, Greg and I will be around in the sense that you'll hear our voices coming out of your device. We just won't be taping one tomorrow, but it'll still have a lot of hopefully fascinating stuff about my trip to Taiwan, thoughts on deterring a Chinese invasion, and just the kinds of things you only find when you're overseas.
Yes, exactly right. So brand new, fresh content that we think you'll find very, very interesting and informative. So stay tuned for that. He's Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell some friends about us as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews as well. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday. Join us again Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.